Welcome back to the channel, everybody. In today's video, I'm gonna cover a one light studio setup using Fox Backdrop. Now, Fox Backdrop did reach out to me on Instagram and they did send me this background for free as long as I made a YouTube video. So I thought it was gonna be another great opportunity to create an educational video for you guys. If you guys remember my last video with Fox Backdrop, we did a 3-light studio setup. And in today's video, I wanted to simplify it and do a simple 1-light setup. So you already know what we're gonna do. We're gonna break this down and we're gonna cover todo el pedo. The background that I was using in the video, I'm gonna leave a link in the description, and it is called the Fox Retro Brown Abstract Portrait Vinyl Backdrop. Step number 1 is to get my camera settings and my ambient exposure. And my goal is to get an exposure that is completely dark. So the easiest one to set up is gonna be ISO, which is gonna be ISO 100, because we want the cleanest image possible. And because we want the ambient dark, we want the camera to be less sensitive to light. Then I move on to the aperture, and I set my aperture to 4.5 because I wanted more depth of field in focus. I wanted the entire face to be in focus. Sometimes if you shoot at aperture 1.8, you run the risk of having one eye in focus and then the other eye blurred out. Another reason why I went 4.5, as I was testing out my ambient, shooting at 1.8 was gonna let in too much light, and so we were gonna get some ambient in the exposure. But not only that, my shutter speed was gonna have to be above 250, which means I was gonna have to get into high-speed sync. And I wanted this specific video to be friendly to all flashes where you don't need high-speed sync. So this setup you can do with any specific flash. After I've set my ISO and my aperture, the last one to focus on is the shutter speed. Now, shutter speed is important because my goal is to kill all the ambient, meaning I want the image to be completely dark because I want to sculpt the light with my strobe light. So increasing my shutter speed is gonna allow me to darken up the background, and I wanna increase it high enough so that I still stay with the flash sync speed. So to stay safe in this video, I went to 250 because most flashes and cameras are either 200 or 250, and I didn't wanna get into high speed sync because I wanted this to be friendly for all flashes, whether you use high speed sync or not. I went with 250, and with these settings of ISO 100, 4.5, and shutter speed 250, I was able to get a completely dark image so that now I can sculpt the light. So here what you're gonna see is you're gonna see me doing a test shot. I'm entering my settings and I'm ensuring that my ambient exposure is giving me a completely dark image because I don't want any light from the ceiling or anywhere in the specific environment that I'm shooting in to dictate any sculpting of the light. I wanna be able to sculpt the light myself with my strobe light, which we're gonna get into next. Once I have my ambient settings and my camera settings set up, now it's time to add my strobe light and to sculpt the light. In this specific example, I was using the Evolve 200 with the Westcott 36-inch Rapidbox, but feel free to use a Speedlite or any modifier that you have, and you can get very, very similar results. When I add my key light, I went for a Rembrandt style light setup, so I put my light about 45 degrees to my subject. And I like to use the bottom part of the modifier as a guide, and I like to raise up my light to about the chin level or eye level. And I also want to make sure that the modifier is angled down 45 degrees to my subject. Once I have my light in place, the next step is to figure out the correct power output of my strobe light or my speed light. Now this process is a lot simpler than you might seem. I get the question all the time, is do I use a light meter? And I don't, because what I simply do is I just look at the different power outputs of my flash. Obviously, the higher the number means more light we're gonna see, and the lower the number means less light. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys some test shots with all the different power ranges from full power all the way to 128. And the key thing is to train your eye to see what exposure looks best. And for me, I typically like to go a little bit underexposed because I don't want to run the risk of losing detail into my highlights. So here's some examples looking at full power all the way down to 128. And I just need to figure out which one is the best power output. Keep in mind the power output is going to be different depending on the strobe or speed light that you're using. But as long as you do some test shots, you should be okay getting your power output. Once we have our power output locked in and our camera settings, we need to decide how far do we want our subject to be from the background. And we want to be able to control the light. because if we have the subject too close, we might create unwanted shadows on the backdrop, as well as light that's spilling onto the backdrop. If we have the subject too far away, about 6 feet away, what we create is no light on the background, and that kind of defeats the purpose of having a colorful background. So what I decided to do is I decided to place my subject about 2 to 3 feet away from the backdrop. And that allowed me to have just a little bit of light hitting the backdrop and still getting that light on my subject. Keep in mind you can control the amount of light hitting the background by feathering, also known as turning the light modifier towards the background to add light, or you can turn the modifier away from the background to add less light on the background. It's all about controlling light, and you can decide what vision you want for your photograph. Whether you want to feather it towards the background or away, that's going to be up to you. The last part of this setup is to add fill light by adding a V-flat. You can also use a white foam board or use the white side from a diffuser and just use the Justin clamp to lock it in place. Now I use this so I can fill in the shadows because I felt like the shadows were a little bit too dark. And by adding this V-flat, it was gonna bounce light from that strobe light and fill in those shadows to soften them up to the way I envisioned for the shot. Keep in mind, the closer I bring in the V-flat, the softer the shadows are gonna be. I'm gonna end this video with a couple of photo examples from this light setup and using the Fox backdrop. Now, if you did enjoy the Fox backdrop, there is a discount code. You can use Eli20 for a 20% off discount code. You're more than welcome to use it. And if not, I hope I at least educated you guys, and I hope you guys at least learned something from this one light setup. If you guys want to learn how I edit my studio portraits, I already have a video on my YouTube channel that shows you the process from beginning to end on how I edit my studio portraits. So don't forget to check out that video and also subscribe and enjoy the photographs. A big thanks to Marco Jilpas for getting all the behind the scenes footage for me for this video, and also Gio and Roland for assisting. I'm gonna leave their Instagram accounts in the description. Follow them because they create some awesome work.